Hello friends, welcome to my channel Pathology Master. Myself Dr. Parth Goswami, I am the consultant pathologist and today I will cover the remaining aspects of tubulointerstitial disease. Now this particular topic comes under competency number 28.3, 28.8 and 28.9. Alright, guys, we know very well that renal pathology is divided into four portions, that is glomerular disease, tubulointerstitial disease, disease of blood vessel and tumors of kidney. We are going to discuss tubulointerstitial disease in today's lecture. Now guys, the examples of tubulointerstitial disease, or we can say the types of tubulointerstitial disease is of these five types, right? Acute tubular necrosis, then tubulointerstitial nephritis, then urate nephropathy, then hypercalcemia induced nephropathy and multiple myeloma. In my previous lecture that was posted before 3 days by me, I have covered all the aspects of acute tubular necrosis. So that topic is covered before 3 days. So you have to see this video first to understand this remaining portion. So now we will proceed with these remaining 4 portions of tubulointerstitial disease. So guys, first we will start with tubulointerstitial nephritis. Alright. Now what could be the etiology of tubulointerstitial nephritis? And now this is your tubule, right? This is your proximal convoluted tubule. Alright. Now between these two tubules, you have the interstitium. So the inflammation of these tubules and the interstitium between the two tubules is known by the name tubulointerstitial nephritis, right? So the first common cause of tubulointerstitial nephritis is obviously an infection, particularly bacterial infection. And the classical example of tubulointerstitial nephritis is pyelonephritis. So the most common cause of tubulointerstitial nephritis is pyelonephritis. It could be because of bacteria or it could be because of virus or parasites. Alright. The second common cause of tubulointerstitial nephritis could be toxins. It could be toxin induced, like that of excessive dose of certain drugs, then hypersensitivity reactions, then excessive analgesic use, then heavy metal exposure, then lead cadmium like exposure, etc. also can lead to tubulointerstitial nephritis. Third cause for the tubulointerstitial nephritis is metabolic disease, like that of urate nephropathy. If you have the hyperuricemia, then your kidney can be infected. It could be because of hypercalcemia or it could be because of oxalate nephropathy. Alright. Fourth cause is physical factors, like that of you have the urinary obstruction due to prostatic hyperplasia, or you have the renal cell tumor that are doing obstruction. Then you can develop tubulointerstitial nephritis. Another causes are immunological reactions, particularly autoimmune disease like that of Sjogren syndrome, and it could be because of transplant rejection as well. Sarcoidosis also can be responsible. Alright. Vascular disease also can cause tubulointerstitial inflammation, and sometimes it could be because of nephrothesis. So we can say that the common causes of tubulointerstitial nephritis include infections, particularly pyelonephritis, then it could be because of toxins, then it could be because of certain metabolic disease. The fourth cause could be because of physical factor like urinary tract obstruction by neoplasm or BPH. It could be immunological reaction due to transplant rejection or autoimmune disease, or because of sarcoidosis. And the vascular disease also can lead to tubulointerstitial nephritis. So these are the causes of tubulointerstitial nephritis. We can say etiology of tubulointerstitial nephritis. So we will start with pyelonephritis. So the common cause of tubulointerstitial nephritis is obviously an pyelonephritis. Now here, apart from tubules and interstitium inflammation, you will have the inflammation of renal pelvis as well. You will also have the inflammation of renal pelvis. Alright. That's why this disease is given the name pyelonephritis. So pyelonephritis means inflammation of tubules, interstitium as well as renal pelvis. Alright. Now what could be the etiopathogenesis of the inflammation of tubules, interstitium, and renal pelvis. So, guys, the common etiology that is associated with acute form of pyelonephritis is urinary tract infection. And suppose you have the chronic pyelonephritis, then the cause is vesicoureteric reflux and obstruction due to renal stone. Now guys, 85% urinary tract infection is because of gram-negative bacilli. You know very well that common cause of UTI is E. coli. So we can say that common causative organism that will lead to pyelonephritis infection is, the first number is Escherichia coli, the second number is Proteus, third is Klebsiella and Enterobacter. So these pathogens are most common for causing the pyelonephritis. So these are the common pathogens causing pyelonephritis. Alright. Now if we consider the pathology of pyelonephritis, then this particular infection of the kidney is mainly happen because of urinary tract infection, and the common mode of spread to the kidney is ascending infection. Suppose you have the urinary tract infection by E. coli, Klebsiella or Proteus, then what happen? Your causative pathogens will travel into the bladder, right? From the bladder they will travel into the ureter, and through the ureter they will finally reach into the kidney. So just follow this lesser light course. Suppose this is a pathogen, then it will reach up to the bladder. Alright, you have the urinary tract infection, so it will reach into the bladder, and from the bladder through the ureter it will reach into your kidney and they will do the pyelonephritis. And you are having more chance for development of pyelonephritis if you have the associated vesicoureteric reflux. That is the common predisposing factor for development of pyelonephritis by ascending route. Alright, so this is the most common mode. You have to remember that it's a most common mode for pyelonephritis. The second pathogenetic mechanism for spread of infection into the kidney is hematogenous infection. Suppose you have the infection in your, suppose you have the bacteria in your blood, you have the septicemia, then through the hematogenous route this organism can reach into the kidney. So we can say that ascending infection and hematogenous infection are the two pathogenetic mechanisms for development of pyelonephritis. Alright. Now as far as the etiopathogenesis of pyelonephritis is concerned, then there are certain predisposing risk factors in which you are having more chance for development of pyelonephritis, particularly more chance for development of acute pyelonephritis. So the first risk factor is urinary tract obstruction by renal stone. Second risk factor is catheterization, prolonged catheterization like instrumentation. Suppose any patient needs prolonged catheterization for 1 or 1.5 months, then they can obviously develop an infection. Alright. Third important cause is vesicoureteric reflux, which is the most important risk factor for development of pyelonephritis by ascending route. Okay, now the infection in the kidney develops if your immunity is low. Suppose your immunity is low, right? If your immunity is low, then you can develop pyelonephritis, and your immunity will be low particularly in case of an pregnancy, in case of an diabetes, in case of an pre-existing renal lesion, and in case of an immunosuppressive therapy. And the HIV like immunodeficiency syndrome also can decrease your immunity. So in such condition you are more prone for development of pyelonephritis. Alright. Urinary obstruction by prostatic hyperplasia also can be responsible for pyelonephritis. So these are the risk factors for development of pyelonephritis. Alright. Now you have to remember that hematogenous route of spread is very less common. The pyelonephritis is mostly because of ascending infection, and the hematogenous route is less common. But if you develop the tuberculosis of kidney, then it is because of hematogenous route mainly. It's not because of ascending route. Okay. Now we will see the morphology of acute pyelonephritis. What is the morphological changes in the kidney in case of an acute form of pyelonephritis. So guys, first of all you have to remember that this is the disease of tubules and interstitium. So your glomeruli will not be infected. It involve only in the late stage. So it will not involve. Alright. Now grossly if you see, then it's an acute infection. So you will develop the abscess over the kidney. You have the white abscess patch over your kidney. So this is the gross diagram showing you the grayish white patch of abscess over the kidney, that is particularly in the subcapsular area. You can see that there is a subcapsular whitish abscess. So that is the gross finding. And sometimes grossly you can see that on cut open your pelvis and calyces are extremely red and they are filled with purulent exudates, particularly pus. They will filled with pus. Alright, so this is the gross finding. Now if you take the sections and examine it histopathologically, microscopically, then microscopically you will have the inflammation in the tubules and interstitium. Particularly you will have the inflammation by the neutrophils because it's an acute inflammation. And additionally, apart from inflammation, you can also have the necrosis of the tubules. We have already covered the tubular necrosis in my previous lecture. Alright. Now fungal infection is one of the exceptions in which in the early stage also glomeruli is involved. We have seen that glomeruli involved only in late stage, but here it can involve in early stage as well. So this is the diagram showing you the morphology of acute pyelonephritis, microscopic finding. So this is the acute inflammatory cell. The tubules is filled with, this is the tubule that is filled with acute inflammatory cells, and you can see the tubular necrosis as well. So that is the morphology of acute pyelonephritis. Now suppose you have not done the treatment of acute pyelonephritis, then what happened? So guys, if you are not treating the tubular pyelonephritis, suppose you are not doing the treatment for pyelonephritis with antibiotics, then what happened? You can develop the complications, and particularly 3 complications are common with pyelonephritis. The first complication is infection can damage this whole pyramid. There can be abscess in this whole pyramid area. Particularly it will affect the renal papilla. So first complication is papillary necrosis. Suppose still you are not doing the treatment, then what happen? It will spread outside the papilla and they will fill whole the kidney with the pus. Your whole kidney will be filled with pus. So that is known by the name pyonephrosis. And suppose still you are not doing the treatment, then third complication that involve is spread of infection outside the kidney. It will penetrate the cortex and spread in the perinephric tissue. So the abscess in the perinephric tissue is known by the name perinephric abscess. So I want to say that there could be 3 complications of pyelonephritis. One is papillary necrosis. This papillary necrosis is particularly seen in case of a diabetic patient and urine obstruction cases. The obstruction could be because of neoplasm or BPH. The another cause for development of papillary necrosis is sickle cell crisis. Suppose you have the sickle cell anemia, then during the crisis, sickle cell crisis, you can develop papillary necrosis. And another cause for papillary necrosis is analgesic induced nephropathy. So these 4 are the important cause of development of papillary necrosis. This particular complication develop in these 4 cases: diabetes, urinary obstruction, sickle cell disease, and analgesic nephropathy. Alright. So this is the diagram showing you the papillary necrosis. This renal pyramid is having the whitish abscess. So there would be whitish abscess in the papillary area if you have the papillary necrosis. So this is the diagram of papillary necrosis. Alright. Now as we have discussed, if you will not treat it, then whole kidney is filled with pus. That is particularly seen in total obstruction causes. So that complication is pyonephrosis. That develop because of obstruction means your exudate will not be drained. It could not be drained, and that's why you are developing pyonephrosis. Your whole kidney is filled with pus. Alright. Your renal pelvis, calyces, ureter all will filled with pus. that is given the name pyonephrosis. And still, if treatment is not done, it can spread outside the kidney into the perinephric tissue, and that is known by the name perinephric abscess. So these three are the main complication of pyelonephritis. Now, how will you diagnose the case of acute pyelonephritis? So for the diagnosis, first of all, you have to take the history regarding the fever. In pyelonephritis, you will have the prolonged fever, malaise, etc. like symptom. You will have the frequency and urgency of urination, and there will be particularly painful urination. So first important one is history. Then you have to do the physical examination that will show the tenderness in the lumbar area. Then you have to do the urine testing, in which you will have the leukocyte cast. You will have the epithelial cast, particularly leukocyte cast. Alright. Now to identify the causative organism and to choose the appropriate antibiotic, you need to do the urine culture. Alright. So these are the diagnostic tests for acute pyelonephritis. In the severe case only, we are taking the biopsy, in which you can identify the morphology of pyelonephritis. Now this is the important MCQ. You have to remember that emerging pathogen that cause pyelonephritis in the kidney allograft is polyoma virus. That is the important MCQ. So that is regarding the diagnosis of acute pyelonephritis. Alright. Now we will see the chronic pyelonephritis, chronic form. So guys, here you will have the tubulointerstitial inflammation as well as inflammation of renal pelvis. It's a pyelonephritis, but here you will have the chronic inflammation in the tubulointerstitium. The inflammatory cells are lymphocytes, plasma cell, etc. Here there will be absent of neutrophils because it's a chronic inflammation. Alright. Now the chronic pyelonephritis is important cause for the end stage renal disease development. So you have to be careful in diagnosis. It could be because of mainly reflux nephropathy or obstructive nephropathy. These two are the main important cause of chronic pyelonephritis. It could be because of reflux, vesico-ureteric reflux, or could be because of obstruction. And as it is the chronic inflammation, you will develop the fibrosis. We know that in the chronic inflammation, the people is having fibrosis. Alright. So you will have the renal scarring as well. Alright. So guys, now we will see the morphology of chronic pyelonephritis. Now this particular disease can be diagnosed on the gross examination as well. The gross examination of kidney will provide you the hint for the diagnosis of chronic pyelonephritis. So guys, in the gross finding, your kidney can be small in size because it's a chronic inflammation, so you will have the fibrosis. The size of kidney will be reduced, and the morphology is somewhat different in vesico-ureteric reflux and due to obstructive cause. So first we will see the gross finding in the vesico-ureteric reflux. So in this particular change, you will have the thick capsule. Your capsule will become thick because of chronic inflammation. That is because of fibrosis. Your capsule is thick and your cortex will be thin. And in this particular disease, in the vesico-ureteric reflux, the backward pressure of urine is not much high. This backward pressure is not much high. So the pathology will develop in the upper and lower pole. So in the upper and lower pole, you will have the thick capsule, thin cortex and scar. So you will have the shrinkage and irregular scar over the upper and lower pole mainly. Alright. And in this particular disease, your calyces will be dilated and they will be deformed. So you have the dilated calyces. Alright. Now if chronic pyelonephritis is because of obstruction like that of renal stone, then the backward pressure of urine is tremendously high. So you will develop the scare, you will develop the scarring or fibrosis all over the kidney. So you have the diffuse irregular scar. Obviously your cortex will be thin and capsule will be thick because of fibrosis. Additionally, in the obstructive chronic pyelonephritis, in the gross finding, your pelvis is dilated because the backflow pressure of urine is very high. Here you will not have dilated pelvises in the reflux cause, but if it is due to obstruction, then you will have the dilated pelvis additionally as well. Obviously, your chelicles will be dilated and deformed. So you will have the dilated, blunted and deformed chelicles. That is the hallmark of chronic pyelonephritis. Along with scar, you will have the dilated, blunted and deformed chelicles. That is the important MCQ. So this is the gross finding in the reflux as well as obstructive uropathic causes. It's a very beautiful diagram to understand the gross morphological changes. And the size of kidney is low. The kidney size will be decreased. Alright. Now if we look into the microscopic finding of chronic pyelonephritis, if you are examining it microscopically, then you will have chronic inflammation. That is the first rule. As it is a chronic pyelonephritis, you have the inflammation with lymphocytes and plasma cell. Now here there will be fibrosis as well. So you will have the periglomerular fibrosis. You can see that you will have the periglomerular fibrosis. Now in the chronic pyelonephritis, in the end stage, your glomerulus also can be involved. This is your glomerulus. It also can be involved, and you will have the fibrosis and hyalinization of glomerulus. Because it is chronic pyelonephritis, you will have the interstitial fibrosis. Alright. And now, one important finding that is seen in chronic pyelonephritis it is also traditionally known by the name CPN, is you will have the eosinophilic material collection in the tubules. In the tubules, you will have the eosinophilic colloid-like material deposition that exactly looks like colloid. Just see this diagram. Just see this tubule. You can see that in this tubule, you have the eosinophilic hyaline material deposition. It looks like an colloid. So that is known by the name thyroidization of tubule. And it is the hallmark of chronic pyelonephritis microscopically. So that is the most important MCQ. So if the microscopic finding of CPN is considered, then you will have the lymphocytes and plasma cell infiltration. You will have the interstitial fibrosis. Alright, you will have the interstitial fibrosis. You will have the periglomerular fibrosis. In the end stage, you will have the hyalinized glomerulus, and you will have the thyroidization of tubules. So that are the microscopic finding of chronic pyelonephritis. If you do the ultrasonography test, then in the USG your kidney will be small and contracted. It is a CPN, chronic pyelonephritis, so obviously the kidney is small in size. Grossly also it will be slow. It will be small in size. Alright. Now suppose you have the pyelonephritis by the Proteus organism, then you will develop chronic pyelonephritis in the form of microscopic presence of foamy macrophages as well. Apart from lymphocytes and plasma cell, you will have the macrophage as well, abundant macrophage. That's why the pyelonephritis caused by Proteus is given the name xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis. And grossly you will have the yellow nodule that exactly look like renal cell carcinoma. So you can be confused in case of an xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis. Grossly it might look like RCC. If you do the microscopic examination, then your picture will be clear. Alright. So until now we have seen mainly the pyelonephritis as a cause of tubulointerstitial nephritis. Now the tubulointerstitial disease can be developed because of certain other factors as well. So we will cover that portion also. I will just give you the outline of tubulointerstitial disease by other cause apart from pyelonephritis. So first is drug-induced interstitial nephritis. So guys, certain drugs can lead to tubulointerstitial inflammation, particularly thiazide diuretics, allopurinol, rifampicin, ampicillin, like that of drugs. These drugs act as a hapten, which bind to the tubular epithelial cells, and so they will become immunogenic, means they will induces the reaction in your body, they will induces the antibody production, so it will mediate type 1 hypersensitivity reaction as well. And this reaction is purely idiosyncratic, means it is not dose related. In certain patient the reaction will develop, while in another patient the reaction might not develop. It is not dose related, it's a purely idiosyncratic reaction, you cannot predict it. And in the microscopic finding, the main important feature for drug induced nephritis is you will have the eosinophilic inflammation, mainly you will have the eosinophils. Alright, now we will see the analgesic nephropathy. So as we have discussed, in the analgesic drug induced nephropathy you will have the papillary necrosis. That complication can develop, it's a complication of acute pyelonephritis. So analgesic nephropathy usually develop when you are taking at least 2 antipyretic medication like that of aspirin plus acetaminophen. Alright, so this is regarding the analgesic nephropathy. In this condition you will develop the papillary necrosis, that is the most important MCQ. And in the analgesic nephropathy you are predisposed for the development of transitional cell carcinoma. So this is the diagram showing you the papillary necrosis induced by excessive analgesic use. Alright, now third one is nephropathy associated with excessive NSAIDs use apart from analgesics. So guys, you know very well that the COX-2 receptor is expressed quite well in the kidney, right? It is not present in gastrointestinal tract. Now this COX-2 receptor, this COX-2 will lead to prostaglandin synthesis and vasodilation in your kidney. So if you are taking excessive NSAIDs, you know very well that NSAIDs could act by COX-2 enzyme inhibitor. It can inhibit your COX-2. Alright, so because of COX-2 inhibition your vasodilatation and prostaglandin synthesis will be inhibited, and so you can develop the nephropathy. Membranous glomerulonephritis can be developed in such case. Alright, now we will see the Chinese herbs nephropathy. So guys, certain herbal remedies contain the aristocolic acid which can lead to tubulointerstitial nephritis, and it increases the risk of carcinoma as well. So you have to be careful while using the herbal remedies. Alright, urate nephropathy. Hyperuricemia is also another cause for development of nephropathy. Particularly it is seen in case of an gout. In the gout you will have the hyperuricemia. Alright, it could be because of uric acid stone, or it could develop because of lysis of tumor cell secondary to chemotherapy in case of an leukemia and lymphoma. In the leukemia and lymphoma we are providing the chemotherapy, so the chemotherapy can lyse the tumor cells and there can be hyperuricemia because of that. So these three are the common cause of hyperuricemia, and that will lead to nephropathy. Alright, now hypercalcemia induced nephropathy, that is also known by the name nephrocalcinosis. So guys, excessive calcium in your body, in your blood, that is known by the name hypercalcemia, that is also not good for you, because of hypercalcemia you can develop obviously an calcium stone. The most common complication of hypercalcemia is development of calcium stone, and the examples of hypercalcemia are multiple myeloma, hypervitaminosis D, hyperparathyroidism, and metastatic bone disease. What happened in the hypervitamin D? The calcium absorption is increased. In the hyperparathyroidism, there will be direct increase in the calcium because of excessive parathyroid hormone. And in the metastatic bone disease, you will have the osteolysis. So osteolysis will increases the calcium. So these are the examples of hypercalcemia in which you can develop the calcium stones and nephropathy. Alright. in the multiple myeloma, you will have the Benz-Jones proteinuria, and that paraprotein also can lead to formation of cast. Particularly, they will develop angulated and tubular cast with the macrophages. So in the multiple myeloma, also there will be nephropathy. Alright, so guys, this is my reference for today's lecture. That is the basic pathology of Robbins, textbook of pathology by Harsh Mohan, textbook of pathology by Ramraj Nayak, and Google. So in our today's lecture, we have covered tubulointerstitial nephritis, and we have included the common causes of tubulointerstitial disease. Particularly, we have started with pyelonephritis. We have seen the etiopathogenesis and morphological findings of acute and pyelonephritis, acute and chronic pyelonephritis. So we have seen the etiopathogenesis, we have seen the morphology. Alright, we have seen the complications of pyelonephritis as well, and we have covered the diagnosis of pyelonephritis by certain investigations. So that was regarding the pyelonephritis, and we have also covered urate nephropathy, then hypercalcemia induced nephropathy. We have covered the multiple myeloma induced nephropathy, etc., like drug induced nephropathy, etc., like topic as well. So we have covered the whole aspects, almost whole aspects of tubulointerstitial disease. So we have covered all the aspects of tubulointerstitial disease in form of acute tubular necrosis. We have covered the tubulointerstitial nephritis, we have covered the urate and hypercalcemia induced nephropathy, and we have covered the multiple myeloma effect over the kidney as well. Among these two are the most important one. So we have covered the acute tubular necrosis and tubulointerstitial nephritis, particularly pyelonephritis, in the detail. Alright, now we will see some of the MCQs. So first MCQ is which of the following is the common cause for renal papillary necrosis? That's the most important question. Sickle cell, obstructive, diabetes, analgesic, or all of the above. So you know that very well that these all four are the causes of papillary necrosis: sickle cell, obstruction, diabetes, and analgesic. So your answer would be E. Okay. Second MCQ. Corticomedullary scar formation with the dilated deformed calyces is a feature of. So you have the scar as well as you have the deformed calyces. So obviously it's a sign of chronic pyelonephritis. So your answer would be B. Thyroidization of tubule is seen in which condition? That's the most important MCQ. So obviously the thyroidization of tubule is seen in CPN, chronic pyelonephritis. All of the following, fourth MCQ, all the following are causes for ETN except. So the most probable answer would be analgesic nephropathy, because polyarteritis nodosa and the HUS is an example of vasculitis. So when your renal vasculitis is present, you can develop ATN, and because of decrease in the effective circulating volume, blood volume, you can also develop ATN. So in congestive heart failure, your circulating blood volume will be decreased, and in these two conditions, in these two vasculitis, your renal vessel is affected. So in both these three conditions, your blood flow to the kidney is decreased, and so you can develop acute tubular necrosis. So all these first three answers are right, and the fourth one might be wrong. Alright. Fifth MCQ is identify the lesion in the given picture. It's a classical presentation. You can see that whitish abscess area seen in the renal pyramid. So it's a papillary necrosis, and it is seen in sickle cell anemia, diabetes, obstruction, and analgesic nephropathy. Alright. Polyoma virus nephropathy mainly seen in which condition? So it's an emerging pathogen seen in case of an graft rejection. So your answer would be kidney rejection. So guys, thank you very much. Hope you have liked my video. If you like my video, then share the video among your friends and subscribe my channel. If you have any question in mind, then you can ask in the comment section. I will surely answer. So this is all about the tubulointerstitial disease. Thank you very much and see you soon.